Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for New Mexico's Albuquerque Hispano Chamber of Commerce Business Echo program. Before we get started, I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping items. I first would like to go over our why we are using this platform. We created the Business Echo program to connect business professionals in a collaborative learning community where they can share expertise, solve real-world challenges, and strengthen their capacity to support thriving businesses and communities. And we do this using the Echo model of all teach, all learn. So I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping items. This session is being recorded, so please be mindful of what you choose to share. Please mute your mics if you're not speaking. And please keep your cameras on because we'd love to see your smiling faces, and it really does help us to build community. Please use the chat for any questions you may have. And please be kind and mindful of others. And if you would please update your Zoom to show both your name, your first and last, and your agency. Now we're going to go ahead and get started with introductions. My name is Laura Chavez, and I am a project manager here at the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber of Commerce. And I'd like to start off by introducing our hub team. Mark, can you introduce yourself, please?
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, Mark Fidel. I'm with my own company, Fidel Consulting Group, and I am one of Project Echo's subject matter experts, and I'll be your presenter today.
Great, thank you. Great.
Hi, everyone. I'm Greg Mullen. I'm a member of the Hub team here for Project Echo, and I'm also the CEO at ABQIT.
Great. Cody.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Cody Teran, Director of First Impressions, and also a student at UNM.
Right. And I'd like to go around the room and have everyone introduce themselves. Carol?
I'm Carol Fidel. I'm with FCG Trust Management, and I'm here observing to learn more about insurance for our company.
Welcome, Carol. Olivia?
Hi, I'm Olivia, and I work here at the chamber and marketing, and I was wanting to be in the Echo session.
Wonderful. We're happy to have you. Tori?
My name is Tori Johnson. I'm an intern here at the Hispano Chamber, and I'm currently going to NMSU as a cyber defense major.
Wonderful. We're happy to have you here. Okay, we're going to go on to introductions online. Carmen, we'd like to start with you.
Hi, everybody. My name's Carmen Good. I am independent insurance agent. I have had my own agency now for about 8 years. And I do have a lot of insurance on my business, but I don't know if I have too much or if I have enough. So I'm glad to be here. So thanks for offering.
Wonderful. Sounds like the right place to be this morning. Thank you. Minerva?
Good morning, Minerva Jurado Perea. I'm the Destination Director for the Convention and Tourism Department here at the Hispano Chamber of Commerce.
Great. Welcome, Minerva. And Barbara. Barbara, would you like to unmute and introduce yourself? Okay, we'll circle back around. How about you, Vedra?
Hello, everybody. I'm Vedra Chavez, excited to be here today to learn from Mark about insurance.
Wonderful. Welcome, Vedra. Barbara, would you like to introduce yourself? Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. This morning we have a presentation. The topic is the importance of insurance and licensing in business, presented by Mark Fidel of Fidel Consulting Group. Mark.
Thanks, Laura. And since this is recorded, and if any of you have trouble sleeping at night, you can watch it later. It'll put you right to sleep. This stuff is not the most exciting, but boy, if you get it wrong, it's a problem for your business. So I put this together really focused on New Mexico small businesses, since that's largely our audience. And just a little bit of background. My educational background is finance from NMSU, an MBA from UNM, and a law degree from University of Denver. I'm a licensed attorney. A licensure in New Mexico. I don't practice. I do some pro bono work, but I work a lot with businesses on these exact topics. I try to work with them before it matters, and sometimes I end up working with them after the fact. And so this is a broad topic, right? This isn't intended to be an 8-hour subject presentation, but we're going to cover a lot in a relatively small amount of time. You're welcome to contact me after this presentation if you have questions or concerns about what you're doing within your own business. So we're going to cover 3 large areas here. First is licensing. From understanding what your requirements are from the Secretary of State to your tax identification number and local registration. We're going to talk a little bit about gross receipts and why you owe it and when you owe it and why you should charge it if you owe it, because it's considered a pass-through tax. And if you're supposed to be charging your customers for gross receipts but don't, you're still liable to pay it to the state. So it makes sense to charge that. It passes through your business, goes to the state. And gross receipts helps the community that you're in with its infrastructure and its budgets as well, because they get that money back based on where your business is located. The next large arc we're going to cover is the insurance layer. We're going to talk about a variety of types of insurance and mainly 6 specific coverages that every small business owner should understand and consider. And then finally, putting it all to work. We're going to talk about some common and costly compliance mistakes and a simple 2-part action plan with 5 checks for this week and 5 for every year, right? So something that I'll leave you with that you can take action on very, very shortly. So what's actually at stake when a business skips these fundamentals? Again, if you're doing everything right, nobody notices in regards to licensing and insurance. If you're doing stuff wrong or you're not doing things in the correct manner, it will matter most when it makes the most difference to you. For example, if you have what should be an insurance claim, but you realize you don't have coverage for it, then you're either out of pocket to replace the money or property lost, right? Or you go out of business, right? So there's fines and penalties if you're uninsured when you should be insured, or you're unlicensed. You can draw state fines. There can be back taxes. There can be penalties and interest that compound quietly over time. You can be forced to shut down, right? New Mexico, the state can obtain a court order stopping an uninsured employer from operating until coverage is in place. You can be personally liable. One uninsured injury or lawsuit can reach past the business and into the owner's personal assets, especially if you haven't set up your business correctly. In that, if you, let's say you established an LLC, but you're paying for your home mortgage out of an LLC bank account, not the best, right? You're intermixing both personal and business, thus making the business LLC more of a fiction than a reality. And that's the type of setup and activity that can cause the LLC to be meaningless and for you to be personally liable. And lost contracts. Government agencies, landlords, and larger clients will not sign without proof of licensing and insurance. Pure and simple. A number of clients in my prior business that when we were looking to sign the contract, they wanted to see a certificate of insurance for our insurance coverage to make sure we had the coverage in place in the event we did something that would generate a claim. So licensing and insurance are really, if you get these things right, then you can focus on what the heck you're doing in your business, right? Whatever that core competency is. So licensing is essentially your permission from the government to operate. It gives you legal standing to do business in New Mexico, provides your tax registration and your gross receipts compliance. It gives you the right to enforce your contracts in court. and it provides credibility with clients, lenders, and state agencies. Insurance is a fallback, right? We don't lead with insurance coverage, but we want to make sure insurance coverage is in place. And I noticed that one of our participants is an independent insurance agent, if I'm not mistaken. So if anything I'm saying doesn't sit well with you, please bring it up and we'll have that discussion. But if you think everything I'm saying is right, then go ahead and, give me a thumbs up. So insurance transfers risks you cannot afford to absorb, meaning it stands in your place in the event of a financial loss that you otherwise couldn't pay for. It can help keep the doors open after an accident or a claim or a natural disaster. It can satisfy legal mandates and contract requirements, and it can shield your personal assets from business losses under the assumption you're running your business correctly in the first place. So in New Mexico, the roadmap to licensing is in this order, essentially. Form the entity. You're either going to form an LLC or a corporation with the New Mexico Secretary of State. If you're a sole proprietor, which I do not recommend you ever become, right? But if you're a sole proprietor, meaning it's your name and that's your business, then you don't have to register with the Secretary of State. All right. Once you've established, you form the entity with the Secretary of State, then you get a federal employer identification number, FEIN. They're free. The past 6 that I've gotten for clients, I had it within 15 minutes of starting the session at the IRS website. So it's a federal tax ID from the IRS. You need it to establish a bank account for your business. You need it to hire employees, and most registrations require. It's essentially the Social Security number for your business, okay? Then you register with Taxation and Revenue Division, the New Mexico TRD. You get your business tax ID number, BTIN, which is a different number than your federal EIN, all right, through the taxpayer access point for your gross receipts and withholding, all right? Then if the community you're in requires registration, such as Albuquerque as an example, register locally. I think the Albuquerque business registration is $25 a year, maybe $35 a year. And that tells the city of Albuquerque that you are a business operating within the boundaries of the city. If you are go ahead, Greg.
You should know there's a lot of problems with their website right now, registering for that license, and
Good to know.
Massive delays.
Okay.
But as long as you submit your registration, you're good.
You're in line.
Right.
Okay. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Perhaps it's an opportunity for your business to.
They just redid it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
It didn't go well.
Yeah. Okay.
But maybe.
So check with the jurisdiction that you're in. If it's Farmington, if it's Las Cruces, right? And check with the county that you're in. So if you're in Albuquerque, you're in Bernalillo County. If you're in Farmington, San Juan County, check to see if the county also has a registration requirement. Okay. You may have a zoning if you're building a new building for your business, you'll obviously have to go through zoning and occupancy approval. Okay. Last, but certainly not least, are industry licenses. The New Mexico Regulation and Licensing Division has a variety of boards that are specific to various industries here in the state. So if you're setting up a massage practice, then you have to have a license from that board underneath RLD. If you're setting up a construction company, then you have to be licensed through the Construction Industries Division, which is above and beyond being licensed with the Secretary of State, being registered with the city of Albuquerque, et cetera. All right. And if you're setting up a combination construction industry, construction firm and a massage practice, well, good luck to you, but you still need both registrations. All right. So depending on what your trade is, what you're doing, you may have to have licenses from one of the New Mexico Regulation and Licensing Division entities. Okay.
And the enforcement on that could include, I'm asking, could that include jail time for an owner who doesn't,
to be
follow
fair,
licensing rules?
I think at the tail end of egregiousness, yes.
Yeah.
Right. So let's say it was a harmless mistake. and there's likely going to be a penalty involved and you get licensed, right? But let's say it was year after year or month after month of knowing you're not licensed, right? You've been told you need to be licensed and you continue to operate. Then I think you would probably fold over into the criminal statutes for that. Okay. Not sure. Talk to an attorney. Okay. So state registration and gross receipts tax. Let's dive a little bit deeper into that. This is the one that really can throw a wrench into the machinery of your new operation. You need that business tax ID number. It's issued by Tax and Rev, and it replaces what used to be called the CRS number. So now it's the BTIN. You can register online through the taxpayer access point before you begin operations. Gross receipts tax is not a sales tax. New Mexico taxes the seller's receipts, including most services. The filing frequency is assigned at your registration, meaning do you have to file quarterly, 6 months, monthly, right? Build GRT into your pricing from day one, so that if you're in a community where the GRT tax rate is 7.5%, for every $100 of services, you're going to charge $7.50 on top of the $100, right? If you don't charge that $7.50, you still owe that $7.50 to Tax and Rent. So it's best to collect it. So your invoice is going to be $100 for services, New Mexico GRT at this rate, $7.50. Total owed $107.50. You're turning around sending $7.50 to New Mexico Tax and Rent. Okay.
Right. So to be clear, that's taxed on your top line revenue. Doesn't matter if you don't make a profit that month or quarter, or
Correct.
you even lose money and
Correct.
you're negative, you still have to pay on your top line, right?
Correct. Yes. Thank you for that. Yeah, it's not after the fact. It's not on your net profit. It's on revenue. All right, because that is where you're interfacing your customers, is on that invoicing step. Okay. Now, you may have customers that are nonprofits that can provide you what's called an NTTC, non-taxable tax certificate, meaning they don't have to pay taxes. Therefore, you shouldn't have to collect any gross receipts from them. And if you get that NTTC from that client, you turn around and tell Tax and Rev, for this money that I got from this nonprofit, I don't have to collect taxes, and here's why. You provide that and you move forward, right? So if it's that $100 that I mentioned earlier, no tax on that, you turn around, you don't owe tax to Tax and Rev as long as you have a valid NTTC from the nonprofit. Okay. Employer accounts. Hiring adds 2 more registrations. Wage withholding runs under your business tax ID number, and then unemployment insurance requires an account with the New Mexico Department of Workforce Solutions. Okay. So for anybody in the audience who really wants to set up a business, go ahead and set it up. Know that these are the things you have to do. All right. One number in many programs. So BTIN covers gross receipts, compensating, and withholding taxes. It is a tax registration. It's not a business license. Just because you have your BTIN number doesn't mean you can ignore the city of Albuquerque's business registration process. Okay. If you're in Albuquerque, as an example, local industry licensing still applies. Okay. Where you operate and what you do can add requirements. So again, city and county registration, Albuquerque, Rio Rancho, Santa Fe, and their respective counties each run their own process for registering businesses, right? Zoning and home businesses. Some businesses are run out of your home, right? You can have a tax deduction based on the square footage of the amount you devote to your home business, as long as it doesn't exceed a certain percentage of the square footage of the home, right? So contact your CPA about that, or your accountant. So home businesses may need a home occupation permit. Storefronts need zoning clearance and a certificate of occupancy before opening. If you are a retail establishment where you have folks coming in to see you, like a food establishment or anything that's retail, you need the right amount of parking. Remember that you also have to have handicap spaces to account for. A long time ago, my previous business, we were looking to buy a rather large building. And the people who owned the land that the building sat on couldn't agree with each other as to sell the land, but one of the partners just owned the building. So the partner that owned the building wanted to sell the building, but nobody could agree to sell the land. So we didn't have parking for this rather large building. We couldn't go through with the transaction because you can't buy a commercial building where you're expected to have people, the public, with no parking. So that deal fell through. At any rate, professional licenses are Regulation and Licensing and its board licensed dozens of professions, including real estate, cosmetology, engineering, accounting, massage therapy, contracting, right? Actually, contractors in the CID is a separate construction industries division. And you have to have that license before you bid, contract, or bill. Licenses carry various classifications and qualifying parties. So if you're going to go into the construction business, there's a lot to it, in other words, all right? And so regulated industries such as food service, liquor, cannabis, childcare, transportation, and health services carry their own separate permits and approvals, okay? And this is before you've collected, $1 of revenue from anybody, all right? So it's not for the faint of heart to set up a new business in New Mexico. The cost of operating unlicensed. So $0 is what an unlicensed contractor can typically recover in New Mexico, in a New Mexico court for completed work. So let's say you're not a licensed contractor, but you've done work and you did great work for somebody on their, like an addition to somebody's house. Beautiful work. And they agreed beforehand to pay you, right? The $35,000 for whatever work you did. And now they're not paying you because you could never put up the fact that you were permitted because you weren't permitted. If you attempt to sue them, it's going to fail because you're not licensed to do business as a contractor in New Mexico, right? So good luck with that. So licensing is what makes your contracts enforceable, right? Having that. If you can show that you showed them your license and they agreed to pay after you did the job and they still refuse to pay, then you can sue them. All right. So unenforceable agreements. Courts can refuse to help you collect what you are owed. And that's a little bit of a misnomer. The court isn't going to say it. It's the other side that's going to say it, right? The attorneys for whomever you're suing. There could be fines, penalties, and interest, which can be assessed by the state, the city, and licensing boards. There can be cease and desist orders. Regulators can stop your operations mid-project. Locked out of contracts, public agencies and prime contractors verify licenses first, right? So it's a multi-path process that it's hard for you to avoid if you're not licensed. And then finally, personal exposure. Cutting corners invites veil-piercing arguments and lawsuits, meaning the LLC or the corporation is really a fiction and we're going after your assets personally, right? So let's shift gears to insurance. So these are the 6 core coverages every small business should strongly consider. General liability. It covers what's called third-party injury and property damage. So third party is not you, it's that customer coming into your building or that customer that you may have been injured on your property, right? Or that member of the public who was walking across your property and tripped on a parking stop. So the baseline nearly every client, landlord, and event will require general liability insurance. Property and business owner's policy bundles property with liability at friendlier prices. So it's building equipment and inventory coverage along with general liability. Workers' compensation. If you have employees, you have to participate in the workers' compensation program. It's medical care and lost wages for employee injuries. This is required by New Mexico law at 3 employees. So if you want to get away with it, right, start a bunch of businesses that have 2 or less employees. Just kidding. Don't do that. And your workers' comp is required sooner for construction contractors. Commercial auto policies. Personal auto policies exclude business use. State minimum limits of 25,000 per accident, 50,000 in total, and 10,000 for med pay rarely cover a real accident, right? So the state minimums aren't really recommended. Professional liability. So if you are a consultant, like I am, right? I have my general liability insurance, and then I have what's called errors and omissions. In the event my advice is actually an error, or I fail to tell a client something, they act upon it and they are financially injured because of that advice or the lack of advice, right? So I have insurance against that, professional liability. For lawyers, it's called malpractice coverage, right? For doctors, malpractice coverage, okay? So errors and omissions in advice or services, it's essential for consultants, designers, brokers, and technology firms, okay? And then cyber insurance, I'll use the large title cyber insurance versus cyber liability, because cyber insurance encompasses cyber liability, but it can also add a variety of things. When you're talking to your broker or your insurance agent about cyber insurance, understand what is being covered. And we had a different session on just cyber insurance. What is being covered for the premium you're paying? Okay. Often it covers breach response if your systems have been attacked and breached, if there's been a ransomware attack, and funds transfer fraud. And this is increasingly demanded in vendor contracts. So if your company is hiring a vendor that is electronically communicating with you, which almost all of them are in some form or fashion, make sure that they have cyber coverage as well, okay? Especially if they are dealing with your customers' information. Workers' comp in New Mexico. This is the one coverage where the state does not give you a choice. The rule is 3 or more employees mean coverage is required, even if only one works in New Mexico. Construction businesses need coverage from the first employee. Agricultural employers are covered too. Owners who work in the business count toward the 3, as do part-time, seasonal, temporary, and family workers. So if you're hiring, your 9-year-old children, that's okay. Child labor laws aside, right? But they'll be part of your workers' comp policy, right? Calling somebody a 1099 contractor does not settle it. Control over the work does. So the difference between employee and a vendor, right, can be different. But if you're controlling a lot of the vendor's work, then under workers' comp, and if they're injured, they may fall under your workers' comp policy. So be careful there. The enforcement, quarterly assessment fees are paid through taxation and revenue along with your other tax filings. The WCA poster, Workers' Comp Administration, and notice of accident forms must be displayed in the workplace. Non-compliance escalates from the Compliance Bureau to a hearing to a court-ordered shutdown if you're in violation. And an uninsured injury then means direct liability for medical costs and lost wages from the business, right? This isn't a health insurance issue. It's a workers' compensation insurance. And the whole reason workers' compensation was developed was because as a society, we wanted to separate work-related injuries from those things that would fall under health insurance necessarily, right? And it's also a will pay if there is the association with that there's an employer who's been injured on the job, okay? So if you have an employee who's been injured on the job, if you have an employee who was injured on his or her own time on the weekend, that's not a workers' comp claim, right? But if you have an employee who was doing work for you on the weekend and was injured, that's a workers' comp coverage, okay? An uninsured injury, again, means direct liability for the business owner. Matching coverages to your businesses. So let how you operate, not a generic checklist, drive the buy. So if your business, here's a little checklist. If your business visits client sites or clients visit you, get general liability insurance first. If your business sells advice, design, or professional services, prioritize professional liability, or E&O, which is called errors and omissions. If you have 3 or more workers or does any construction, workers' comp is required, right? Uses vehicles for work, even employee-owned ones, get commercial auto with hired and non-owned coverage. If your business stores customer data and takes payments electronically, make sure your cyber liability is intact. And if your business leases space or owns equipment in inventory, make sure you have property coverage and a business owner's policy. Talk to your insurance agent, talk to your broker, right, about these coverages, because a fair number of businesses are going to have a mix of these situations happen. So insurance and licensing become sales tools the day a client asks for proof, right? What you will be asked for, it's not uncommon, and it's usually commonplace for a client to ask for a certificate of insurance naming the client, an additional insured endorsements on your general liability policy. You'll be asked for waivers of subrogation in leases and vendor deals, and that's a point of negotiation. You'll ask, do you have specific limits with 1 million per event, 2 million in total, a common floor? When we sold our cyber insurance, our cyber security practice, we were a penetration testing firm. We had $10 million in coverage specific to the E&O, the errors and omissions coverage. Why? Because one particular client required it, and it was worth the premium to keep that client. So you'll be asked for license numbers on bids, ads, and contracts, because that provides independent confirmation that you have those licenses. What you should ask for. So from every vendor you have or every subcontractor, you ask for their certificates of insurance, right? You want that flow down to happen. You want license verification through RLD and CID lookups. You want renewal tracking, so proof of insurance never lapses mid-contract, especially for longer projects, right? You want insurance requirements written into your contracts with your vendors, and higher tier work that compliance now qualifies you for. So if you have the compliance down, that means you can go for larger jobs, okay? From that perspective, and you can do more and better business. Avoid these mistakes. Don't let coverage lapse. A gap between renewals voids claims that arise in that gap. So if your insurance lapsed on December 31st and you didn't pay the next premium until April 1st, you have 2 months of exposure there, right? 2 or 3 months of exposure there. Business use on personal policies, personal auto and homeowners policies exclude business activity. So if you're in a traffic accident and you are going to a client's work in your own car that's not on a commercial auto policy, your personal policy may exclude it because you were doing business with your vehicle, right? Or going to a business site. Missing renewals and filings on the licensing side, licenses, registrations, and GRT deadlines, each run on their own clock. Make sure you know what those renewal deadlines are. Misclassifying workers. A 1099 label does not make someone a contractor, right? Control over that person and their activities does. Stopping at the LLC filing. Entity formation is step 1. It's not proof of local or tax compliance. And then outgrowing your coverage, right? Your initial coverage, insurance coverage was great, but then you've grown and you've hired more people, but you didn't update your insurance, right? That's also, it's your responsibility, but it's also on your insurance broker, right? Whoever you're working with, to check in with you. Hey, what's different this time? You know, what's different from now than 6 months ago or a year ago? You know, well, I've hired 15 new employees. Oh, really? Well, your workers' comp covers 3. Let's get that updated, right? Those types of things. So your action plan, 30 minutes this week, 1 review every year. Do these things this week. Confirm your entity is in good standing with the Secretary of State. It's easy. It's an easy lookout. Verify your business tax ID number with the state and assign GRT filing frequency in the taxpayer access portal. Check city or county registration for every location you maintain if you maintain physical locations. Pull your certificates of insurance and read your actual limits and exclusions. Make sure you know your policies. And then put on a calendar every license, registration, and policy renewal date so you can take care of it. Review every year your coverage limits against current revenue, payroll, and assets. And you should do that with your insurance professional. Headcounts against the 3 employee workers comp trigger. Are you at 3 employees or are you larger than that now? Do you have new services, locations, or vehicles that change your risk, therefore change what your insurance policy and coverages should look like? Are your insurance requirements in your newest contracts and leases, do they match the coverage you have, or do you need to get updated coverage? Finally, your subcontractor and vendor COIs, certificates of insurance, and license status. Make sure those are in place. So protect that business you're building. You're spending a lot of time and energy doing it. You might as well protect it so that you can continue doing the fun stuff you're doing. If there's any questions, I'll take them now at 10:41. All right. And if there's no questions, that's fine. You can put them in the chat, or you can come off of mute and ask those questions as well. Vedra or Greg, you have a question?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned you guys had to carry a $10 million policy at the request of a client.
Yeah.
At one point. We're actually going through that at this moment in the final stages of negotiation with the client. They're asking for 10 million.
Okay.
Which is 7 million higher than our current policy.
Yeah.
We were going to try and talk them down on that, in negotiation. I'm sure it's open to negotiation, but probably not a lot of room in a very large entity. Are you thinking, or?
It never hurts to ask the question.
Yeah.
Right. Or say, one possible way is we're at 2 million now. We can easily get to 5 million in coverage now. And within 6 months, I can get to 10 million, or within a year, I can get to 10 million. Mm-hmm. Will you accept a staged approach, right? Or do you require 10 million in coverage now, right?
Okay.
And figure out what the differential is between your 2 million and your 10 million in premium.
Yeah,
it's significant.
It's about $30,000 to $40,000 a year
difference.
Yes.
Okay.
It's huge.
And then does that cost
that make
the
up
benefit of the client?
Yeah.
Right. It may or may not, quite honestly.
Yeah.
So I think it's worth a question, very much so. Why are you requiring this? Right.
Yeah.
Is it just standard and there's no movement here? And if there's no movement, then suggest the tiered approach, right? Yeah. To be able to go, we can go up to 5 now.
Yeah.
Right. Reasonably. And once we've established a relationship in 6 months, whatever, right?
Right.
We can get up to 10.
That makes a lot of sense. I really appreciate that.
Ask that question. Sure. No problem. Is there a question in the chat? Nope. Not yet.
Luz has her hand up.
Oh, okay. Please.
Hey, good morning. Great presentation. I just wanted to add, everything you said, especially about insurance, is really important for the business. However, I tend to find that a lot of times, though, there are key pieces when it comes to the insurance coverage that a lot of businesses forget. And that is like key person and vital agreements for people who have business partners and for the
Absolutely.
Business owner themselves. I think those are very key things that every business owner should really have in their portfolio, including the registration and everything, to make sure that they're covered 360. That if something happens to the biggest person with the largest liability, doesn't matter what you have, everything else is going downstream, especially if you're in the first 5 to 10 years of your business.
No doubt. I really appreciate you saying that. Right. This presentation was geared at what are table stakes for starting a business, right? And if you're at the point in your business where you have a partner or partners, right? Key person insurance is such that the beneficiary of that policy is the business itself, and the insured, the people who we're insuring, are those key people. What the policy essentially ends up paying for is the cost to replace that key person if they've died while they're in control, helping to run the business, right? The other part is a buy-sell agreement. And setting up the buy-sell agreement is necessary to be able to understand, let's say that key person wants to leave. What does that look like? And how can it be funded, right? So there's a variety of areas, so Louise, that you mentioned that I didn't specifically cover here that are very important. So my advice, talk to your insurance professional, right, about the basics that I've covered here, as well as those additional things about how to structure your business, right, and how to structure in the event if you're in a partnership or if there's multiple key persons or two key people, right, how to structure it so that the business itself is protected and each key person is protected in the event somebody leaves suddenly or somebody dies suddenly. Thank you for that.
One challenge I noticed, Mark, when it comes to working with comp insurance, over the years, we've since fixed the challenge, but previously they want to bill you off of the actual amount of employees that you had working and what they're categorized in, the level of risk that their job does.
Right.
Which you really can't know until the work has happened.
Right.
And so they go back and they look at the actual work that you did, and then they audit basically what they had estimated your payment to be. And oftentimes you can wind up with giant bills from your insurance company
after the fact,
way later.
Yeah.
Up to 6 months or even a year later. We finally found a company that integrates with our payroll, so it can get actuals and we can bill more in line with what we're actually.
So it's not a 6 month or 1 year delay. It's maybe a couple weeks.
Right. But that had been a huge challenge for us previously, just to get these audit bills that were
good. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. All right. And so, Louise, I don't know if you saw in the chat the note from Greg about what you were just speaking about.
Yeah, you were the insurance broker.
Sure, Greg, I can email you. I'll do that after this call.
You're cutting out now. We lost you, but yeah, if you could give me an email, send me an email. I'd love to chat with you more about that.
Absolutely,
Thank
you got it. You're welcome.
Okay. Other questions? Any comments? Any good movies you've seen? All right, we won't go there. All right.
I have a comment.
Please.
Just, it seems to me that for somebody who's just starting their business and just seeing this for the first time and learning about like all the different types of insurance and like, how would you advise somebody to navigate that? Would you advise them to like first start off by getting an insurance broker or, and even choosing one? How do you even choose one?
Oftentimes it's a trusted referral, meaning somebody who's running their business well. Hey, who do you use for your insurance coverage, right? You can talk to specific agents who are either independent agents and they represent a variety of companies, or they're called captives and they work with one company, they work for one company, right? Or you can go to an insurance broker. As an example, Hub International here in Albuquerque is a brokerage firm, and they work with business clients all the time. And they have access to various insurance markets around the country, insurance companies around the country, and they can put together packages for you, right, for you to look at, depending. Really reach out to folks who are in business, right? If you're part of an association that is, say you're part of the New Mexico Association of Builders and Contractors, as an example, right? They may have affiliates who sell insurance, and that association can then refer you out, right? I would say state agencies probably won't refer you to anybody, right? Bankers will, right? You can get referrals from your banker as to, hey, I need to get insurance intact or put in place. Do you have a couple of agencies I can talk with, right? And push comes to shove, internet searches, business insurance Albuquerque, right? You'll get some top hits and see what you can go with from there. Okay.
Wonderful tips.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Sure.
And thank you for that presentation.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have any questions? please know that if there's a topic that you're interested in having us discuss here during one of our sessions, you can reach out to us at our email address, which I posted in the chat box. It's hispanochamberecho@gmail.com. And if you would like to rewatch this session or go back to any of our sessions, we do have a playlist on our Hispano Chamber YouTube channel, and the link for our playlist is right there. I just posted it. And lastly, I would like to remind you that we do have these sessions every first and third Tuesday of the month. And we invite you to mark your calendars and continue to participate. We appreciate your participation. Again, this platform is for you, and we're hoping that you find it useful in approaching your business challenges. And I also wanted to mention that our next session is going to be commercial real estate, acquiring a brick and mortar presence, and that's going to be presented by Carl Fidel, Associate Broker of R1 Property Management. And that is going to be on the 21st, Tuesday, July 21st. So we hope you can join us for that. Anybody have any last words they would like to say?
No, thanks for taking the time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Mark.
All righty.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a great day.
Okay.
Good stuff.
Yeah, that was very interesting.
Good.